So I understand that to not repeat history, we need to know the past of the history and the human race. And in this talk, I want to provide a cohesive speech for you by talking about the good and the bad of our author named Robert Beck, aka Iceberg Slim. I will leave it to you, your beautiful minds, to make a decision on whether it belongs in the canon, because, well, it's not a decision anyway, what belongs. Comment down below. I personally do not believe this book belongs in the Western literary canon. I will list my reasons as well as defensive positions against my own argument to have a thought-provoking conversation with you, the audience. My name is Gabriel Montoya Driscoll, and I will be talking about the Western literary canon, as well as the book I have been reading this semester called Pimp, The Story of My Life by Iceberg Slim. During this short TED Talk, I have a lot of parallels between the canon and my semester-long read, as well as strong opinions on the book itself. To start, I'll say Iceberg Slim's book Pimp, The Story of My Life is not suitable for the Western literary canon. But what is the Western literary canon, you ask? It refers to the most highly praised work and literature that have shaped and defined Western civilization. These works are not always exclusive to the West, as a lot of the stories within the canon are from all around the world. Some books and authors you have probably read earlier in life include Of Mice and Men, The Great Gatsby, and work by the famous author Shakespeare. If you have read any of these books and or know the authors, then you know the significance that the stories have and the impact they left at the time. If you haven't read these stories, let me give you an example of its importance by talking about another book in the canon called 1984 by George Orwell. Some of the themes in the book include strong messages and warnings about communism, the consequences of an over-controlling government, and technology gone too far. This book was important because it was directly inspired by the horrific events that occurred during World War II and based on real dictators like Hitler from Germany and Stalin from the Soviet Union. You can see why a book like that can be important. Of Mice and Men dealt with what it means to be human and how compassion rules over all else. The Great Gatsby was important because of the themes of social constructs, man's struggle with time, and the disintegration of the Roaring Twenties. I do know that there are no black authors within the canon, and Iceberg Slim was a very important man to the black culture and the industry of writing, music, and even film. So what makes the book I read called Pimp, The Story of My Life not worthy of being in the canon? To start, Iceberg Slim's material is hot-blooded and fervid. Not everyone can handle this kind of content well, let alone enough for it to be taught in a classroom setting. Even with a mature group of students, Slim's material may be triggering and flat-out offensive to some, especially to the female audience, because of its obscene amount of abuse and unfairness to women within the book. There is rape, misogyny, dehumanization, and more. The slang is quite hard to come by, and to understand it without looking at the extensive glossary in the back of the book, you could argue that it teaches old urban slang and black language, but we don't live in Chicago, and the words are a little bit dated, as well as mostly drug-related or pimp-related. In Quinn Ethan's Who's the Mac? The Performity and Politics of the Pimp Figure and Gangster Rap article, Quinn talks about how the word pimp in the music industry does not even have to do with abusing women, but more of a lifestyle and a side hustle in this new generation. But is this really how we should be treating this nuanced and harsh topic, glorifying it by talking about drugs, abusing women? All the things pimps really did to get their money or scratch are being used as a form of fiction and a play on words to make money. If you were to look at a playwright and poet like Shakespeare, you know that you do not need excessive and vulgar lyrics to have an amazing song, play, poem, etc. For example, rappers nowadays use it as a moneymaker instead of bringing awareness to the real problem of pimping. Rappers like Ice Cube and Ice-T, two rappers who got their names inspired by Slim, are huge examples of pimp rap. You tell me if these lyrics are conducive to the already growing problem that is pimping. This is a song by Ice Cube in March of 2000 called Pimp Homeo. Here are some lyrics. Hey Julie Ho, I am but $300 short. Thy pimp, first know my ass is tired. Thy pimp Homeo, be this hour I have done weeping. While creative, you can see the problem it promotes with the lyrics and the message it pushes. Moving on to a different pace of speed and a different topic, OnlyFans. Catherine, in her article called OnlyFans is not a safe platform for sex work, it's a pimp, argues that women who are sex workers are not in a safe environment and that legalizing sexual content to be released makes people think that it's okay, especially the economically stable. She argues that during the pandemic that women lost even more of a voice, domestic violence went up, and economic survival was harder. This goes hand in hand with OnlyFans taking advantage of these disadvantages. The problem with this is that what we can see is that the pimp in the form of a man has changed over the decades, even though it was subtle, to a digital form. This is relevant today, and if we cannot distinguish the surface entertainment value from pimp rap to the terrible action of actually pimping, how can we tackle the problem in its entirety? For this reason alone, you could argue it into the canon, because it would bring awareness to people on a level never seen before. Overall, with everything I've talked about in this class and the essays I've written, I'm at a point where I could argue this book in the canon and argue it to not be in the canon. The extensive research has taught me that you can see the good and negative in just about anything. I would love to hear your opinions in the comments. This is my photo of Iceberg Slim, aka Robert Beck. Oh gosh, let me turn down the brightness. Robert Maupin, aka Iceberg Slim or Beck. This photograph was by John D. Kish, Separate Cinema Archive / Getty. And lastly, but not least, my sources. I had 1 scholarly and 2 credible. And there we are. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know your opinions in the comments.